At the awards gala in Chicago, the ballroom was filled with doctors, investors, and reporters. The lights were bright, the music was soft, and everyone was waiting for the biggest award of the night. My husband, Dr. Rowan Caldwell, stood near the stage in a sharp black tuxedo, smiling like he had already won. I stood beside him in a silver dress, proud and nervous at the same time. The award he was about to receive was for a surgical recovery protocol that had taken years to build. Years of research, years of testing, years of sacrifice, and most of that work had been mine. When his name was called, the room exploded in applause. Rowan kissed my cheek quickly and walked to the stage. I watched him under the shining lights, expecting him to thank me first. I thought he would say my name with pride. Instead, he thanked the hospital board, the donors, and the incredible team who supported the project. He never said my name. Not once. I felt my stomach drop, but I told myself maybe he was just nervous. Then he began speaking about the research as if it had been his vision from the start. He described the long nights, the trial phases, the data corrections, all things I had personally handled. People around me nodded in admiration. Some even whispered, "He's brilliant." My hands started shaking. I wanted to believe there was some mistake, that maybe he would correct it before finishing. But he didn't. As he stepped off the stage holding the Crystal Award, a man in a gray suit approached me. I assumed he was coming to congratulate us. Instead, he handed me a sealed envelope and quietly said, "You've been served." My heart stopped. I opened it slowly, already feeling the room spin around me. Divorce papers. Filed weeks earlier. The reason listed was irreconcilable differences. Attached was a statement claiming I had no meaningful contribution to Rowan's professional success. I looked up at Rowan. He was shaking hands, smiling for cameras, acting like nothing had happened. When our eyes met, he didn't look surprised. He looked prepared, calm, almost relieved. In that moment, everything inside me broke. 8 years of marriage. 8 years of shared dreams. I remembered the nights I stayed awake analyzing patient data while he slept. The conferences I skipped so he could attend. The grants I helped write under both our names. I had believed we were partners. I believed success for one of us meant success for both. But standing there with divorce papers in my hand, I realized something painful. He had planned this. He had chosen the biggest night of his career to erase me completely. In front of colleagues. In front of friends. In front of strangers. The applause still echoed in the room, but all I could hear was my own heartbeat. That was the night I understood that the man I loved wasn't just leaving me. He was trying to take my life's work with him. When I look back now, I can see how everything slowly shifted, but at the time, it felt normal. Rowan and I met during our surgical residency in Boston. I was focused, quiet, and completely devoted to research. He was confident, charming, and knew how to win people over in seconds. We studied together, worked long hospital shifts together, and built dreams about opening a research center one day. I truly believed we were building something as equals. The recovery protocol that later became his award-winning innovation started as my private project. I began researching post-operative infection patterns after losing a patient I couldn't save. That loss stayed with me. I wanted to create a system that would monitor patients more carefully during the first 72 hours after surgery. I spent years collecting data, analyzing charts, and applying for small research grants. Many were rejected. I kept going anyway. Rowan used to sit across from me at the kitchen table while I worked. At first, he just listened. He would say, "You're onto something big, Alara." I felt supported. I felt loved. When I finally developed a structured protocol with measurable results, he suggested we present it to hospital investors. He said I deserved recognition, but that he could help explain the surgical side in meetings since he had more public speaking experience. I trusted him completely. The first investor meeting felt like a win for both of us. Rowan introduced the concept smoothly, and when questions got technical, he nodded toward me to answer. But after that meeting, something subtle changed. In the next presentation, he spoke more. He simplified my explanations. He began using phrases like our model and our breakthrough. I didn't mind at first. We were married. What was mine was his, right? Over time, he asked for copies of all my research files for organization. He started attending meetings alone, telling me the board preferred fewer presenters. When I questioned it, he would kiss my forehead and say, "I'm just handling the politics. You focus on the science." I wanted to believe him. The nights grew longer. I continued running trials, refining data, and writing reports. Rowan became busier with administrative meetings. He stopped sharing details. When I asked about progress, he'd say, "Everything's under control." The day he told me the hospital was preparing a major award submission, he made it sound like a surprise gift for us. I asked to review the final draft. He said there wasn't time and that he had already sent it. I remember feeling uneasy. A small voice inside me said something wasn't right. But I pushed it away. Marriage requires trust, I told myself. Doubt felt like betrayal. Now I understand the truth. While I was building the foundation brick by brick, Rowan was quietly placing his name on the front door. After the award submission, small things began to feel wrong, but I kept convincing myself they were nothing. Rowan became distant, but not in a dramatic way. It was subtle. He started taking calls in another room. When I walked in, he would lower his voice or end the conversation quickly. If I asked who it was, he would say, "Just hospital stuff. You don't need to worry." Money started disappearing from our joint account. At first, I thought it was normal expenses, conference fees, travel deposits, donations. But when I checked the statements carefully, I saw large transfers I didn't recognize. When I asked him about it, he laughed softly and said I was overthinking things. "You've been buried in research too long," he said. "Let me handle the finances." I wanted to believe him. I didn't want to be the suspicious wife. Then came the meetings I wasn't invited to. Rowan would mention discussions with board members after they had already happened. When I asked why I wasn't included, he said it was just administrative strategy, and that they preferred speaking surgeon to surgeon. That explanation didn't fully make sense, but I swallowed my doubts. One evening, I found an early draft of the award application saved on his laptop. My name had been listed under primary researcher. In the final version that was submitted, my name was gone, completely erased. When I confronted him, he looked annoyed instead of guilty. "It complicates things," he said. "Hospitals like a single face behind innovation. It's cleaner." Cleaner. That word stayed in my mind, as if I were something messy to remove. Around the same time, a powerful board member named Vaughn Mercer began treating Rowan differently. At hospital events, Vaughn praised him publicly, calling him the future of surgical advancement. I noticed the way they would speak privately in corners. When I approached, conversations stopped. I asked Rowan directly one night, "Is my name still attached to the patent filing?" He didn't answer right away. He poured himself a drink, avoided my eyes, and said, "You worry too much." That was not an answer. I started checking timestamps on documents, comparing versions of files I had saved. I saw that certain materials had been downloaded from my private research drive without my knowledge. Rowan had access because we shared everything. Or at least, I thought we did. Still, I hesitated to accuse him. I loved him. We had built a life together. Doubting him felt like tearing down our marriage with my own hands. But deep down, something was breaking already. I just didn't know how far he was willing to go. The gala night kept replaying in my mind over and over. After I opened the divorce papers, I didn't cry right away. I just stood there frozen, while people walked past me with champagne glasses and bright smiles. No one knew my marriage had just ended. No one knew the award being celebrated was built on my work. Rowan finally approached me after the photos were taken. His face was calm, almost emotionless. "We'll talk tomorrow," he said quietly, as if we were discussing grocery plans. I asked him one question. "When did you decide I wasn't worth mentioning?" He didn't answer. He just walked away to greet another group of guests. That was when the humiliation truly hit me. It wasn't just the divorce. It was the public silence. The deliberate choice to erase me in a room full of witnesses. The divorce papers were detailed. They claimed we had grown apart. They suggested I had been emotionally distant because of my obsession with research. There was even a line implying I had contributed very little to Rowan's professional growth. Reading those words felt like being stabbed slowly. I had built the research that made him famous. I left the gala early. Outside, the cold air hit my face, and finally the tears came. Not loud, dramatic sobs. Just quiet tears of disbelief. 8 years of marriage reduced to legal language. The next morning, Rowan was gone from our apartment. Half of his clothes were missing. Important documents were gone too. He had planned everything carefully. On the kitchen counter, he left a short note saying, "This is for the best." For the best. I began reviewing the documents more carefully. Attached to the divorce filing was a financial summary. Rowan had already separated certain assets. He had moved money into accounts I didn't recognize. It was clear this wasn't an emotional decision made overnight. It was strategic. What hurt the most was realizing he wanted an audience. Serving me those papers at the gala wasn't accidental. He could have done it privately. Instead, he chose the night he received recognition for my work. He wanted control. He wanted to stand in the spotlight while I stood in shock. But beneath the pain, something else began to grow. Anger. Not loud anger. Not screaming or breaking things. A quiet, steady anger that made my thoughts sharper. If he had planned everything so carefully, then I needed to think carefully too. I stopped crying. I started organizing. I pulled out my old research notebooks, my original digital drafts, every dated file stored on my private drive. I printed emails. I saved backups. If Rowan believed I would simply disappear, he didn't understand me at all. He thought he had ended my story that night. He had no idea it was only the beginning. The first person I called was not a friend. It was a lawyer. Her name was Maren Kessler. She had a quiet voice and sharp eyes that missed nothing. When I explained what happened, she didn't react with shock. She simply asked, "Do you have proof the research was originally yours?" That question grounded me. This wasn't about emotions anymore. It was about evidence. I brought boxes of notebooks to her office. Years of handwritten notes, dated and signed. Flash drives filled with early drafts. Grant rejection letters addressed only to me. Clinical trial data, saved under my login credentials. Maren examined everything carefully. She pointed out something important: timestamps. Digital files record when they are created and modified. If Rowan had copied my work later, it would show. Within days, we discovered something disturbing. Rowan had filed a patent listing himself as sole creator just 3 months before the gala. The submission included language copied directly from my earliest drafts, paragraphs written years before he ever presented the idea publicly. He assumed I wouldn't check, but he underestimated how organized I was. Maren also found a clause buried in hospital partnership paperwork I had signed during a stressful expansion period. It gave Rowan temporary control over joint intellectual property during external negotiations. I remembered signing stacks of documents while juggling research deadlines. I trusted him. He used that trust like a weapon. The divorce filing suddenly made more sense. If he finalized the separation quickly, he could argue that the research was developed independently after our marriage began to fall apart. He was trying to rewrite history. I felt sick when I understood the strategy. This wasn't just betrayal of a wife. It was calculated professional theft. Maren advised me to stay silent publicly for now. No confrontation. No emotional messages. Just preparation. We filed a formal request to review the patent claim. We also demanded full financial disclosure in the divorce proceedings. Rowan's legal team responded quickly. They painted me as unstable, claiming I was trying to sabotage his career out of bitterness. Reading those statements hurt, but they also strengthened me. If this went to court, the truth would be documented permanently. One afternoon, while organizing files at home, I found something unexpected: an external backup drive I had forgotten about. It contained early video recordings of me presenting the protocol at small research workshops years ago. In those recordings, Rowan sat quietly in the audience, listening. Watching that footage changed something inside me. I saw proof of who I had been before fear and doubt crept in. Confident, intelligent, certain of my work. For the first time since the gala, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt prepared. A week later, someone knocked on my office door at the hospital. It was Dr. Silas Hargrove, one of the senior surgeons. He wasn't close to Rowan or me personally, but he had always been respectful. He stepped inside and closed the door gently. "I need to tell you something," he said. Silas explained that months before the gala, Rowan had presented my protocol in a private board meeting. He showed slides that were clearly taken from my research drafts. Silas remembered because he had once seen me working on the same charts in the hospital library. At the time, he assumed we were presenting together as a team. But when he asked Rowan why I wasn't there, Rowan brushed it off and said I was focusing on minor details. Silas looked uncomfortable as he spoke. "I didn't think much of it then," he admitted. "But after the gala, I realized something wasn't right." His words confirmed what I already feared. Rowan hadn't just taken credit publicly. He had been building his solo image for months behind closed doors. Silas also revealed that Rowan had quietly asked several staff members to sign confidentiality statements about the research presentations. The reasoning was that the hospital wanted to control information before the award announcement. Now it was clear those agreements were meant to keep people silent about my involvement. I asked Silas why he was telling me this. He paused before answering. "Because I've watched you work for years," he said. "And I know whose ideas those were." His support meant more than I expected. For weeks, I had felt isolated, like Rowan had already convinced everyone that I was irrelevant. Knowing someone had noticed the truth gave me strength. Marin immediately contacted Silas to record a formal statement. He agreed to testify if needed. That changed everything. It wasn't just my word against Rowan's anymore. Meanwhile, whispers began spreading quietly through the hospital corridors. Not loud gossip, just small questions. Some staff members started reviewing older meeting notes. A few realized my name had appeared in early planning documents that were later revised. Rowan sensed the shift. He sent me a short email for the first time since the gala. "Stop this before it gets ugly." I stared at the message for a long time. He still believed I was the one causing trouble. He still thought intimidation would silence me. But something inside me had changed. I didn't respond emotionally. I forwarded the email to Marin. The battle was no longer private. And Rowan was beginning to understand that the foundation he built his reputation on was not as solid as he believed. The divorce hearings began quietly, without cameras or applause. Rowan walked into the courtroom looking confident, dressed perfectly, as if this were just another professional event. I sat across from him, calm but steady. I was no longer shaking. His lawyer spoke first. They described me as overwhelmed, emotionally fragile, and resentful of my husband's success. They claimed Rowan had supported my small research interests, while building the true structure of the protocol himself. Hearing my years of work reduced to small interests hurt, but I didn't interrupt. When it was our turn, Marin stood and began presenting evidence piece by piece. She showed dated notebooks, early grant applications submitted under my name alone, and digital timestamps proving the original drafts were created years before Rowan filed his patent. The courtroom grew very quiet. Then came the video recordings from the old workshops. In the footage, I stood confidently explaining the recovery protocol in detail. Rowan was visible in the audience, taking notes. That moment changed the tone of the room completely. It was clear who the original creator was. Rowan's expression tightened for the first time. Under questioning, he claimed we had collaborated informally. But when asked why my name had been removed from final documents, he struggled to give a direct answer. His earlier confidence started to crack. At the same time, the hospital board launched an internal review. They requested copies of the patent submission and compared it to archived materials. Vaughn Mercer, the board member who once praised Rowan publicly, began distancing himself. Suddenly, emails that once sounded supportive became formal and cautious. Conference invitations that Rowan had been excited about were placed on hold. The award committee announced they were reviewing authorship concerns. His golden image began fading quietly, not with drama, but with doubt. For the first time, I saw fear in Rowan's eyes when we passed each other outside the courtroom. He didn't speak. He didn't threaten. He simply looked uncertain. The judge ruled that there was strong preliminary evidence of shared intellectual property and ordered a suspension of exclusive patent control until final review. That decision alone shifted the balance. Rowan no longer had full ownership of what he tried to claim. The divorce settlement discussions changed tone after that. Rowan's team pushed for privacy. They no longer accused me loudly. They wanted resolution. But I wasn't fighting for revenge and anger anymore. I was fighting for acknowledgement. The final ruling came on a quiet Tuesday morning. There were no reporters outside the courthouse, no dramatic speeches. Just a judge reading a decision that would change everything. The court recognized me as the original creator of the core surgical recovery protocol. The patent rights were officially amended to include my name as primary author. Rowan's claim of sole ownership was dismissed. Financial compensation was ordered as part of the divorce settlement. But honestly, the money mattered less than the acknowledgement. For months, Rowan had tried to rewrite the story of our marriage and our work. Now the truth was part of the official record. It could not be erased again. After the ruling, Rowan didn't look at me. He gathered his papers quickly and left the courtroom without saying a word. The confidence he once carried so easily was gone. There were no cameras waiting for him this time. No applause. The hospital completed its internal investigations soon after. The award committee quietly updated their records. Future publications listed my name correctly. Rowan was not publicly destroyed or humiliated. Instead, something more lasting happened. His reputation became uncertain. In medicine, doubt spread slowly but deeply. Invitations became fewer. Leadership opportunities disappeared. A few months later, I received an invitation of my own. A national surgical conference in Boston asked me to present the updated recovery protocol under my name. Only my name. Standing backstage before my presentation, I felt nervous, but not afraid. This time, I wasn't sharing credit out of trust. I was standing there because I had earned it. When my name was announced, the applause felt different from the gala night. It wasn't loud because of drama. It was steady, respectful. I walked to the podium alone. I didn't mention Rowan. I didn't mention the divorce. I spoke about the patients who inspired the research, about improving recovery outcomes, about the importance of integrity in medicine. As I finished, the audience stood. In that moment, I realized something important. Rowan had tried to erase me under bright crystal lights, thinking public humiliation would weaken me. Instead, it forced me to fight for myself in a way I never had before. Revenge didn't come from shouting or destroying him. It came from reclaiming what was already mine. When I stepped off the stage that day, I wasn't someone's wife. I wasn't someone's shadow. I was Dr. Alara Whitmore, recognized, respected, and finally standing in my own light. And this time, no one could take that away.